Is it reasonable to expect people to change their minds? Now, I'm starting off with the presumption that someone just made a God tier argument. Something that cannot be argued with. It is a really, really good point. And this could be on any subject whatsoever, right? Anything political, economic, social, what have you. Fine. Let's think of this metaphor. Imagine your ideology. So all of your beliefs put together, structured, formulated, how they interact with each other. Imagine this is a house, right? And then you hear a knock at the door. You open the door, and someone shows up and they say, I'm an inspector, and I'm here to tell you that your whole house needs to go. You got a gas leak, it's bad. You got to get rid of the whole house. Like, the whole house? I'm not getting rid of the whole house. They're like, nah, you got to get rid of all of it. And you're like, why? They're like, well, the gas leak is bad. Isn't it just a natural inclination that if you hear that there's a problem with the house, you would sooner turn towards potentially fixing that one problem than getting rid of the entire house? I think a lot of us, especially in the context of electoral politics, we look at people with views divergent and at times seeming totally antithetical to our own views, and we question and wonder, why don't they just abandon all of their beliefs and just switch over to my side? Why don't you just get rid of every memory you've ever had and pursue something because I'm telling you it's right? Of course people aren't going to make that jump. That's a huge jump. It's actually not reasonable to be quote unquote reasonable in this way. The more practical, the more reasonable, biggest air quotes in the world, approach would be to try to fix one problem. Rather than taking a ship and turning it into Theseus' ship by replacing every single floorboard, just removing one. Remove the one that has the hole in it. We're going to get rid of that one, and we're going to try to fix it with another one. That is the natural response to someone saying that. Now, there are ways in which this can vary. What if it's someone you really trust in, you really care about, you have a long history with, and you know that they're coming from a good place and they care about you? You're probably more likely to reinvestigate your own views, and maybe you won't only take out one board, but maybe you'll take out a few. Maybe you're willing to even, going back to the house metaphor as opposed to the ship, maybe you're willing to redo an entire room of the house. Well, think of it, again, as a house. What are the costs associated with that? Well, it takes time. It takes time to reinvestigate all of your beliefs, or even just one room of this house, so to speak. That takes time. It takes planning. You have to figure out how all the stuff fits together. It requires knowledge. You have to know how it fits together. It requires resources. You need to have the information of what you're now adding in. Those informational resources have to be given to you by someone. Now, if you're not an expert and you're not already well read, you may not have the connection, so to speak, to a good contractor. So you may have to source a contractor on the open market. This is sort of a little bit, not precisely a paradox, but an ironic situation in which sheep have to be their own shepherds. You, who are not an expert on a subject, have to then find experts without knowing if someone is or is not an expert, because you'd have to be an expert to know that, obviously. So you may consult with your friends, you may consult with your family, but very often, these are the exact people you can't ask on this subject. Because very often, one of the main reasons why people don't abandon their houses is what? It's the place they grew up in. It's right in the neighborhood with their friends, with their families. Oh, it's right in a community that I want to live. It's got a good school, good for my kids to grow up in. These are the exact people you can't consult with on this issue. Because if you reveal that you're playing with the idea of leaving your home, they will interpret it that you're leaving them. When I say that politics is downstream of personality, I am making two claims, one that is moral and one that is strategic. The moral claim is that a person's micro, their internal self, is inextricably linked to their macro, how they view and interact with the external world. The strategic argument I am making is most people don't know anything about politics. They don't follow world events. They don't really even follow the news. You're lucky if they're getting infotainment, at best. Their understanding of history is not derived from books, but from vaguely historical movies. Don't attribute a malintended philosophy and worldview to someone when in truth they are just projecting their micro, their internal self and worldview onto the macro, projecting it outward, extrapolating it. Their macro, their external worldview. Very often this is their attempt to rationalize a big thing with smaller things. Don't assume malintent when ignorance, or even stupidity, is a far easier explanation for what's going on. Far more appropriate too. This is not a desire to escape from the politicization of this culture. Many people want to go back to like the 1960s and 70s, times famous for not being political at all. Times are always political. The question is, do you have the privilege of not caring about the politics that are going on? And that can be a great feeling, you know. But for people who are like not allowed to like go to certain schools, live in certain communities based on where they're from, what they look like, or maybe you're not able to engage in a certain practice because your religion isn't the one of the dominant culture. Politics is your life. And inversely, if you don't feel like politics is relevant and people should just go on with their lives, that's because politics isn't obstructing your life. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but it's something you have to be conscious of and you need to be thankful for. That's a gift that most people do not have, neither today nor historically. It's important that we not take for granted the gifts that we have. Now, I am someone of the belief that maybe this is for the best. Maybe it's better to not have this be so ubiquitous with your reality that you don't ignore it. Now this gives us the opportunity to become aware of it and to be thankful for it. So maybe that's a silver lining, or maybe that's just a necessary set of circumstances. But on this subject, let's really investigate this further. Again, going along with this house metaphor, what do a lot of people say? What's the phrase they use? Really think about it, if you know it. What's the phrase they use when they've actually reached the point, which is very rare, of someone's come to the conclusion, I can't save the house, I need to get rid of the house. What's the term they use? They have become politically homeless. This is not by accident. Again, just like a home, your politics, your ideology, your beliefs, they're a source of meaning in your life. They are an anchor of where you find yourself in reality, both like spatially in the world, like where you're located, what's your address, where do you live. When you think of, oh, I gotta go home, what's the path you're drawing up in your mind for how to get home? What's the center of your map, so to speak? But a home is just an important place for people. You develop memories there. You invite people over. You may have dinner with people. You may share food. You may share words. You may share watching movies together. You might invite people over in the summer and enjoy your time together. I think that sometimes it is true that we do live in very, very irrational times, and that is leading to the downfall versus civilization and society. Of course, of course, of course. But is it really rational? Is it really logical? Is it really reasonable to treat purpose and meaning as though they're not important? Isn't importance the only thing that's important? This is too much of a mechanistic and machine outlook on the world. That, like, our life is like a car, and you could just take out, like, oh, you know, the carburetor's not working, let's switch that out. Oh, this wheel's not good, let's take out this wheel and put on another one. But it's not like that. Human beings have their organs, they're literally wet machines, you know? Don't think about that too much. But all the parts, they're like interconnected. And sure, you can obviously replace organs in human, like goes without saying. But I just mean in this analogy to say there's more to it than that. Things are interconnected. And it's not as simple as just yanking something out. I think that we shouldn't trivialize the concepts of importance and meaning and purpose in people's lives. In fact, I think these are the things that maybe matter the most. And I think an approach, even though I have naturally aggressive tendencies. We need a method of accommodation here. This desire to have people just completely leave behind all of their beliefs, everything they know, to come follow us. If we're going to ask them to make that big of a bid, that big of a life change, we have to do things on our part to make that more possible for them. We have to remove a lot of the pain in this process and not just say bootstraps. I thought we were supposed to be the people who are against bootstraps. I thought we were the ones who were supposed to acknowledge that sometimes it takes a village. I thought we were the ones who were supposed to understand that expecting sick people to be their own doctors is very often not a good solution. It's not a problem to ask for help, to need help. And we really should believe that. If these are people who are at least even 5% curious about what we have to say, we need to make it easier for them to reconsider all of their beliefs. And when you come up to someone knocking at their door and saying, hey, you have this one fundamental problem, cough, cough, it requires you to get rid of everything you believe in, they're not going to make the jump. It makes a lot more sense if we can put things in terms that they can understand and we can lead them to come to the conclusion on their own. And you know, the beauty of this is maybe they don't have to throw everything out. Maybe they don't need to get rid of all of their beliefs. I don't think that's necessarily not to our advantage either. I think that that can show that we can live in harmony with groups that don't agree with us, and it makes those groups less hostile towards us. This movement, this desire for a greater sense for third spaces, community, communitarianism, if you will. We got to act like a community then. We really do. So is it always reasonable to just expect people to be hyper reasonable? Is it reasonable to ask someone to throw away all their beliefs at once? No. But we can give them tools. We can give them tools to be able to do these inspections on their ideological home. We can give them the resources to be able to start rebuilding the parts of their houses that are a problem. And we can give them the basic decency and friendliness that if they want to come back and ask questions, that they feel like they can do so. I think this is a much healthier process, and I think that this approach, more simply, that we can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, will do us well in the long run. Now, I'm not against vinegar, but if you're going to use a carrot and stick approach, I tend to use the stick as the last resort rather than the first. So maybe this is a better way for us going forward to have a stronger community, a stronger ideology, a stronger movement, a stronger project. And I think this could help us get some wins on the board.